Story time, day 2, chapter 2 of the book that we recently picked up from a friend called The Psychology of Money. And today we're going to find out more about what actually this book has to offer. Now we're actually going to dive into it. That was just the introduction on the first video. This is just chapter 1, so we're not even really started yet. So chapter 1 is called No One's Crazy. I'm already having problems with this. What do you mean no one is crazy? No one's crazy. Bro, do we live on the same planet? This guy must not leave his house much or lives in very nice places where no one crazy, or do you not watch the news or have the internet or anything? Like, what do you mean no one's crazy, motherfucker? Anyways, let's continue. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.000000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think, or 80%, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. Okay. Let me tell you about a problem. It might make you feel better about what you think your money. It might make you feel better about what you do with your money, and less judgmental about what other people do with theirs. Yeah, I feel like that's always people's concern, other people's business and their money, especially me sometimes. Like, why do I give a shit what other people do? Fuck them. Okay, people do some crazy things with money. Of course they do, but no one is crazy. I can't. Here's the thing: people from different generations, raised by different parents who earned different incomes and held different values in different parts of the world, born into different economies, experiencing different job markets with different incentives and different degrees of luck, learn very different lessons. I mean, in that case, yes, of course, it's a very, very basic fact. Just kick that. Everyone has their own unique experience with how the world works, and what you've experienced is more compelling than what you learned secondhand. So all of us, you, me, everyone, go through life anchored to a set of views about how money works that vary wildly from person to person. What seems crazy to you might make sense to me. Of course. The person who grew up in poverty thinks about risk and reward in ways the child of a wealthy banker could not fathom if he tried. Oh yeah. Makes sense. Okay. The person who grew up when inflation was high experienced something the person who grew up with stable prices never had to. The stockbroker who lost everything during the Great Depression experienced something the tech worker basking in the glory of the late 1990s can't imagine. The Australian who hasn't seen a recession in 30 years has experienced something no American has. That's actually quite a scary fact. Okay. On and on. The list of experiences is endless. You know stuff about money that I don't, and vice versa. You go through life with different beliefs, goals, and forecasts than I do. That's not because of us it's not because one of us is smarter than the other or has better information. It's because we've had different lives, shaped by different and equally persuasive experiences. Your personal experiences with money make up maybe 0.0000001% of what's happened in the world, but maybe 80% of how you think the world works. So equally smart people can disagree about how and why recessions happen, how you should invest your money, what you should prioritize, how much you should risk, how much risk you should take, and so on. In his book on 1930s America, Frederick Lewis Allen wrote that the Great Depression marked millions of Americans inwardly for the rest of their lives. But there was a range of experiences. 25 years later, as he was running for president, John F. Kennedy was asked by a reporter what he remembered from the Depression. He remarked, "I have no first-hand knowledge of the Depression. My family had one of the great fortunes of the world, and it was worth more than ever then. We had bigger houses, more servants, we traveled more. About the only thing that I saw directly was when my father hired some extra gardeners, just to give them a job so they could eat. Oh, well, that's nice. See, at least JFK's dad was a nice man. Don't know much about JFK's dad or JFK himself. I really did not learn about the Depression until I heard about it at Harvard. Oh, what a life. You don't know that your country's going through it until you go to college. Learn about it in school. This was a major point in the 1960 election. How people thought could someone with no understanding of the biggest economic story of the last generation be put in charge of the economy. Well, what's the man supposed to do? Just go live in the streets? Hell no, I'm not abandoning that wealth. Fuck you. Shit. Man was born into wealth. We're going to judge him because he was born wealthy. It was in many ways overcome only by JFK's experience in World War II. That was the other most widespread emotional experience of the previous generation, and something his primary opponent, Herbert Humphrey, didn't have. The challenge for us is that no amount of studying or open-mindedness can genuinely recreate the power of fear and uncertainty. Oh, that fear. Oh, that fear. I can read about what it is like to lose everything during the Great Depression, but I don't have the emotional scars of those who actually experience it. And the person who lived through it can't fathom why someone like me could come across as complacent about things like owning stocks. We see the world through a different lens. Spreadsheets can model the historic frequency of big stock market declines, but they can't model the feeling of coming home, looking at your kids, and wondering if you've made a mistake that will impact their lives. Okay, yeah, that's just a whole different that's a whole different situation. When you are by yourself, you can take those risks. You can take what we call sophisticated risks. But once you have children, your risk ratio should go way down. You should not be putting more risks when you have kids. Lesson, if you have kids. If you're especially going into investing and stuff like that, those are big gambles because you never know. Anything can happen. In real estate, it has higher value, but still anything can happen. So you just invest smartly. Just know how much you're investing, and you just gotta know your situation. But yeah, definitely if you have kids, keep the ratio down. See, I'm alone. I can do crazy shit. Not that I'm doing that. Yeah, okay. Studying history makes you feel like you understand something, but until you've lived through it and personally felt its consequences, you may not understand it enough to change your behavior. We all think we know how the world works, but we've only experienced a tiny sliver of it. As investor Michael Batnick says, Batnick. That's a cool ass laugh, Batnick. Michael Batnick. I am Michael Batnick. Says some lessons have to be experienced before they can be understood. We are all victims in different ways to that truth. In 2006, economists unlike Ulrich Malmendier and Stefan Nagel. See, Stefan Nagel, much easier. But the Malmendier? Okay, it's done now. From the National Bureau of Economic Research, dug through 50 years of the Survey of Consumer Finances, a detailed look of what Americans do with their money. In theory, people should make investment decisions based on their goals and the characteristics of the investment options available to them at the time. But that's not what people do. The economists found that people's lifetime investment decisions are heavily anchored to the experiences those investors had in their own generation, especially experiences early in their adult life. If you grew up when inflation was high, you invested less of your money in bonds later in life compared to those who grew up when inflation was low. If you happened to grow up when the stock market was strong, you invested more of your money in the stocks later in life compared to those who grew up when the stocks were weak. I mean, I guess, but That's the thing with these things. They're so volatile. They continue to go up and down all the time. So there's always cycles to these things and in every stock. And now, especially how the stock market has changed. It's all cyclical. There's cycles. You'll know when it's going to go up and down really for like big market hits. But yeah, I mean, I guess. The Economist wrote, our findings suggest that individual investors' willingness to bear risk depends on personal history. Yeah, makes sense. No, not intelligence or education or sophistication, just the dumb luck of when you were born. The Financial Times interviewed Bill Gross, and framed bond manager in 2019. Gross admits that he would probably not be where he is today if he had been born a decade earlier or later. That piece said. Gross's career coincided almost perfectly with a generational collapse in interest rates that gave bond pieces a tailwind. That kind of thing doesn't just affect the opportunities you come across. It affects what you think about those opportunities when they're presented to you. What will you think about those opportunities when they're presented to you? Okay. To Gross, bonds were wealth generation machines. To his father's generation, who grew up with the endured higher inflation, they might have seen a wealth incinerators. They might be seen as wealth incinerators. Very nice description there. The differences is how people have experienced money are not small. Even among those you might think are pretty similar. Take stocks. If you were born in 1970 and the S&P 500 increased almost tenfold, adjusting for inflation, during your teens and 20s, that's an amazing return. If you were born in 1950, the market went literally nowhere in your teens and 20s, adjusted for inflation. Two groups of people, separated by chance of their birth year, go through life with a completely different view of how the stock market works. So what stocks did in your early teens and 20s? So there is a chart here, but I don't know if it's if that is bam. Pause it if you want. It's not really that not important of a chart, I would say. Or inflation. On the next page it says, if you were born in the 1960s America, inflation during your teens and 20s, you're young. Impressionable years when you're developing a base of knowledge about how the economy works, sent prices up more than threefold. That's a lot. You remember gas lines are getting paychecks that stretch noticeably less, far than the ones before them. But if you were born in 1990, inflation has been so low for your whole life that it's probably never crossed your mind. Wait till the 2000s. And now it's so high. Holy shit. Okay. America's nationwide unemployment in November 2009 was around 10%. But the unemployment rate for African American males aged 16 to 19 with a high school diploma was 49%. For Caucasian females over age 45 with a college degree, it was 4%. Oh shit. Local stock markets in Germany and Japan were wiped out during World War II. I wonder who did that. Okay. Entire regions were bombed out. At the end of the war, German farms only produced enough food to provide the country's citizens with 1,000 calories a day. Compare that to the U.S., where the stock market more than doubled from 1941 to the end of 1945, as the economy was the strongest it had been in almost 2 decades. No one should expect members of these groups to go through the rest of their lives thinking the same thing about inflation, or the stock market, or unemployment, or money in general. No one should expect them to respond to financial information the same way. No one should assume they are influenced by the same incentives. Jesus, how did I see that? My fucking dyslexia. No one should expect them to trust the same source of advice. No one should expect them to agree on what matters, what's worth it, what's likely to happen next, and what the best path forward is. The view of money was formed in different worlds. And when that's the case, a view about money that the one group of people thinks is outrageous can make perfect sense to another. A few years ago, the New York Times did a story on the working conditions of Foxconn, the massive Taiwanese electronics manufacturer. The conditions are often atrocious. Readers were rightly upset. But a fascinating response to the story came from the nephew of a Chinese worker who wrote in the comment section. My aunt worked several years in what Americans call sweatshops. It was hard work, long hours, small wage, poor working conditions. Do you know what my aunt did before she worked in one of those factories? She was a prostitute. Damn. Okay, well, that's definitely a level up. The idea of working in a sweatshop compared to the old lifestyle is an improvement in my opinion. I know that my aunt would rather be exploited by an evil capitalist boss for a couple dollars than to have her body exploited by several men for pennies. Yep. That's why I'm upset by many Americans thinking we do not have the same opportunities as the West. Our governmental infrastructure is different. The country is different. Yes, factory is hard labor. Could it be better? Yes, but only when you compare such to American jobs. Perspective. That's what it's all about. I don't know what to make of this. The part of me wants to argue fiercely. Part of me wants to understand. But mostly it's an example of how different experiences can lead to vastly different views within topics that one side intuitively thinks should be black and white. Fair point. Every decision people make with money is justified by taking the information they have at the moment and plugging it into their unique mental model of how the world works. Those people can be misinformed. They can have incomplete information. They can be bad at math. They can be persuaded by rotten marketing. They can have no idea what they're doing. They can be misjudged. They can misjudge the consequences of their actions. Okay. That was weird. The exceptions of their actions. Where is it? I lost it. Damn it. Oh, can they ever? Yeah, they don't know the consequences of it. Oh, can they ever? But every financial decision a person makes sense to them in that moment and checks the boxes they need to check. Yep, I've seen that firsthand. They tell themselves a story about what they're doing and why they're doing it. Oh, yeah, baby. And that the story has been shaped by their own unique experiences. Take a simple example. Lottery tickets. Wow, this popped up perfectly. Americans spend more on them than movies, video games, music, sporting events, and books combined. Congratulations, America. And combined. And who buys them? Mostly poor people. And that's why they stay fucking poor. Keep buying fucking lottery tickets. The lowest income household in the US on average spend $412 a year on lottery tickets. 4 times the amount of those in the highest income groups. 40% of Americans cannot come up with $400 in an emergency. Which is to say, those buying $400 in lottery tickets are by and large the same people who say they couldn't come up with $400. They are blowing their safety nets on something with a 1 in a million chance of hitting it big. That seems crazy to me. Probably seems crazy to you too. But I'm not the lowest income group. You're likely not either. So it's, only if you know. So it's hard for many of us to intuitively grasp the subconscious reasoning of low-income lottery ticket buyers. But strain a little and you can imagine it's going something like this. We live paycheck to paycheck and saving seems out of reach. Our perspective for much bigger wages seems out of reach. We can't afford nice vacations, new cars, health insurance, or homes in safe neighborhoods. We can't put our kids through college without crippling debt. Much of the stuff you people who read finance books either have now or have a good chance of getting, we don't. Buying a lottery ticket is the only time in our lives we can hold a tangible dream of getting the good stuff that you already have to take for granted. We are paying for a dream, and you may not understand that because you are already living a dream. That's why we buy more tickets than you do. That is not why you buy more tickets than we do, but we're not going to discuss that. There's another reason. You don't have to agree with this reasoning. Buying lottery tickets when you're broke is still a bad idea. That's why. But I can kind of understand why lottery tickets sales persist, and that idea. When you're doing what you're doing seems crazy, but I kind of understand why you're doing it. It covers the root of many of our financial decisions. Few people make financial decisions purely with a spreadsheet. They make them at dinner table or in a company meeting, places where personal history, your own unique view of the world, ego, pride, marketing, and odd incentives are scrambled together into a narrative that works for you. Another important point that helps explain why money decisions are so difficult and why there is much misbehavior is to recognize how new this topic is. Money has been around a long time. King Aliatas of Lydia, now part of Turkey, is bought to have created the first official currency in 600 BC. It's a fucking long ass time ago. 600 BC, what is this, 2023? What, 2,600 years ago? That's still relatively new. Oh my god. Yeah, 2,600 years, that's not that long ago. I mean, it is a long time, but relatively that's not that long. But the modern foundation of money decisions, saving and investing is based around the concepts that are particularly infants. Take retirement. 2018, there was $27 trillion in the U.S. retirement accounts. What the fuck? Being the main driver of the common investor investing savings and investment decisions. In your retirement plan, yeah, you might as well fucking invest in $27 trillion. But the entire concept of being entitled to retirement is, at most, 2 generations old. Okay, that's nothing. Before World War II, most Americans worked until they died. That's what everybody does, pretty much. That's what everybody used to do. Just work until you did. Might as well. What else you got to do? That was the expectation and the reality. The labor force participation rate of men aged 65 and over was about 50% until the 1940s. So then, see, it's not our generation, it's the 1940s generation. They started not doing the whole work till you did shit. And see, it rubbed off on us. Definitely not work until I die. Fuck that. Social Security aimed to change this, but its initial benefits were nothing close to a proper pension. When Ida Mae Fuller cashed the first Social Security check in 1940, it was for $22.54 or $416 adjusted for inflation. God damn. Man, you were a fucking ball in 1940, walking around with $22. Fuck. $400 now. Shit, it's not even a third of my rent. What the fuck? Bitches. What fucking damn. Living life. It was not until the 1980s that the average Social Security check of retirees exceeded $1,000 a month adjusted for inflation. More than a quarter of Americans over age 65 were classified by the Census Bureau as living in poverty until the late 1960s. There was a widespread belief along the lines of everyone used to have a private pension. But this is wildly exaggerated. The Employee Benefit Research Institute explains. Only a quarter of those aged 65 or older had pension income in 1975. Among that lucky minority, only 15% of the household income came from a pension. The New York Times wrote in 1955 about the growing desire, but continued inability to retire. To rephrase an old saying, everyone talks about retirement, but apparently very few do anything about it. It was not until the 1980s that the idea that everyone deserves and should have a dignified retirement took hold. And the way to get the dignified retirement ever since has been an expectation that everyone will save and invest their own money. That's what everyone should do. You don't need a fucking retirement plan. Invest your own goddamn money. Why the fuck are you relying on your job to do it for you? Let me reiterate how new this idea was. The 401k, that backbone savings vehicle of American retirement, did not exist until 1978. The Roth IRA, that's older. That's younger than my mama. I love you, mama. I'm kidding. You're not old. The Roth IRA was not born until 1998. If it were a person, it would be barely old enough to drink. 1998. Oh, they can definitely drink now. It should surprise no one that many of us are bad at saving and investing for retirement. We don't know when we're going to die. Okay? I'm not about to fucking just start saving money. I mean, I have saved money, obviously. But listen, I don't know when I'm going to die. I'm going to spend this shit. No, I'm kidding. Save your money. Figure out how to do it yourself. Save it. It's smart. It's very smart. It's wicked smart. I lost my spot again. Okay. It should surprise no one that many of us are bad at saving and investment for retirement. We're not crazy. We're just all new. We're all just newbies. Same goes for college. The share of Americans over age 25 with a bachelor's degree has gone from less than 1 in 20 in 1940 to 1 in 4 by 2015. College tuition over the same time, yeah, they were like, well, let's take advantage of these dumbasses coming to college and just fucking charge the shit. No wonder no one was going to college. Everyone was like, yeah, we're going to stay away from these people teaching our kids. Thousands of dollars. I don't want that. This decade's a kid. Where did I go? The average college tuition over that time rose more than fourfold, adjusted for inflation. Something so big and so important, hitting society so fast, explains why, for example, so many people have made poor decisions with student loans over the last 20 years. There is no decades of accumulated experience that even attempt to learn from. We're winging it. We are definitely winging it. Oh, I'm definitely winging it. Shit, I don't know nothing. That's why I'm reading this book. Hopefully it can help me. Same for index funds, which are less than 50 years old, and hedge funds, which didn't take off until the last 25 years. Even widespread use of consumer debt, mortgages, credit cards, and car loans did not take off until after World War II. Well, no shit. Okay, that makes sense because none of that shit even existed. Well, people were fighting a goddamn war. They got time for cars and credit cards. Dogs were domesticated 10,000 years ago and still retain some behaviors of their wild ancestors. Yet here we are with between 20 and 50 years of experience in the model financial system, hoping to be perfectly acclimated. For a topic that is so influenced by emotions versus fact, this is a problem, and it helps explain why we don't always do what we're supposed to do with money. We all do crazy stuff with money because we're all relatively new to this game. And what looks crazy to you might make sense to me. But no one is crazy. We all make decisions based on our unique experiences that seem to make sense to us in a given moment. Now, let me tell you the story about how Bill Gates got rich. Oh, this should be interesting. Okay. Very nice. Well, that was the conclusion of Chapter 1. So next time we're going to be reading Chapter 2, and I'm guessing it's going to be about Bill Gates. Luck and risk. So, shoot. I'll see you guys later.